Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling something a little bit different, and I think it's going to be a really fascinating topic.
Yeah.
It's about this whole idea of turning the impossible into possible.
Mm-hmm.
And you shared a text with us called Texto Colado,
Mm.
and it really seems to explore this whole concept through the lens of faith um,
Right.
and something kind of bigger than ourselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what's really interesting about Textocolato is that it kind of starts with this real life story.
Okay.
Someone who was facing this really serious medical crisis, a fracture so bad that amputation was like a real possibility.
Wow.
And it
Yeah.
really digs into how, their faith played into what happened next.
Yeah, it definitely grabs your attention right from the start.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole text kind of emphasizes that, believing in something beyond what we can see
Mm-hmm.
isn't about ignoring reality.
Right.
It's more about seeing a starting point, I think, where most of us would see a dead end.
Yeah, and that's where faith comes in, I think. Textocolato really explores this idea not as some kind of passive hope,
Mm-hmm.
but as an active force that can help us look beyond our current circumstances.
I like that. That really resonates with me because it's kind of about, embracing the possibility of things happening that we might not fully understand.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, have you ever encountered something that just seemed impossible, yet it happened anyway?
It's a good question to think about.
Yeah.
It kind of connects to this idea that crises, those moments where things feel impossible, can become opportunities for something greater to reveal itself.
Like in that story about the fracture.
Yeah.
Even when the situation looks so bleak,
Right. Yeah.
the text kind of finds this thread of hope running through it.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. But, I mean, if we're talking about the impossible becoming possible, doesn't that suggest there's something pushing back against that possibility?
That's a good point. The text actually talks about this metaphor of faith moving mountains from the Bible.
Okay,
I think that's a really interesting way to look at it.
it really is. So if we're applying that metaphor to our own lives,
Hmm.
I mean, what are those mountains for us?
Yeah.
Those fears or obstacles or even like limiting beliefs
Right.
that just feel impossible to overcome.
Exactly. It's about recognizing them, right?
Mhm.
And Textocolato even challenges us to think about what concrete steps we can take to kind of strengthen our faith when we come up against those seemingly impossible situations.
So it's not just about believing, but about taking action based on that belief.
Yeah.
It's like the text is pushing us to move beyond just thinking about faith to actually living it out.
Absolutely. And one of the most striking lines from Textocolato, I think, is permit your impossible to become the fertile ground to live the miracle.
Wow.
It's such a powerful image, right?
Yeah, it suggests that instead of seeing those challenges as roadblocks,
Mm-hmm.
we can actually see them as opportunities for something incredible to happen.
Exactly. It's about shifting our perspective from this can't happen to what if this is where the miracle begins.
Now, that's a powerful way to look at things. And, Texto Colado also points to the story of the Israelites trapped by the Red Sea.
Yeah.
In the book of Exodus as an example of this.
It's such a classic story, right? This
Yeah.
seemingly hopeless situation that becomes this powerful testament to faith.
Yeah.
What's interesting is it doesn't shy away from the fact that the Israelites were terrified and felt totally stuck. They were facing their own impossible at that moment.
It sounds like it's more about how they responded to that feeling of being trapped.
Right. And Textocolato connects that back to this idea of gratitude,
Okay.
even when things are tough. It's not about pretending that the struggle isn't there.
Yeah.
It's about finding that inner strength and hope, which I think can be so difficult when you're facing a mountain,
I can definitely relate to that. I mean, there have been times where clinging to any sense of gratitude just felt impossible.
Yeah.
But looking back, I can see how it helped me through.
Right. And Textocolato emphasizes that everyone, no matter their background, faces those impossible moments in life.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a health crisis or a financial struggle or a relationship falling apart, we're all susceptible to those moments that shake us to our core.
It's that shared human experience of
Mhm.
hitting a wall and wondering, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
And it's in those moments that faith, however you define it, can provide that strength to keep going.
It's not about ignoring the difficulties. It's about choosing to believe in a power that can work through them, even if we can't see how that's going to happen.
Mhm.
It's about holding on to hope, even when it feels like everything's falling apart.
That's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
But how do we actually cultivate that kind of faith?
Yeah.
Especially when we're surrounded by messages that tell us to rely on ourselves, our own strength, and our own logic.
That's where Texto Colado really challenges us.
Hmm.
It asks us to look at how we react when we hear the word impossible.
Okay.
Do we immediately focus on the barriers? Or do we look for a different way through?
So instead of seeing a full stop,
Yeah.
we choose to see a comma, a pause before a new sentence begins.
Right.
It's about consciously choosing to believe that there's more to the story.
Exactly. And Texto Colado even suggests looking to those classic stories of miracles for inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Think about like the healing of the paralytic or the resurrection of Lazarus.
Wow. Yeah.
These stories remind us that with faith, there's always potential for something beyond what we think is possible.
They really challenge us to expand our understanding of what could happen.
And that leads us to a really important question, I think.
Right.
One that Texto Colado really grapples with. How do we find a place for gratitude even while waiting for a miracle to happen?
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's easy to be thankful when things are going well.
Yeah.
But what about when you're stuck in a situation that feels impossible to get out of?
Right. Texto Colado suggests that gratitude isn't about our circumstances, it's a choice. It's a perspective we can choose to adopt no matter what's happening around us.
So it's about choosing to focus on what we do have, even amidst those challenges. It's about trusting that there's a bigger picture at play,
Yeah.
even when we can't see it.
And that brings us right back to the core message, right? The impossible isn't the end. It's an invitation to see things in a new way.
It's about acknowledging that our limitations aren't necessarily the limits of what's possible.
Right.
And that can give us a really powerful sense of hope no matter what we're facing.
And one thing that really stood out to me in that story about the fracture
Yeah.
is how it shows what can happen when we surrender our impossible to something bigger than ourselves.
It's about letting go of the need to control everything and trusting that there's a plan, even when it feels like everything's going wrong.
And sometimes that plan involves miracles. Those moments where the natural order of things seems to shift
Yeah.
and something truly extraordinary happens.
So it sounds like Texto Colado is inviting us to kind of revisit those questions we've been pondering, but in a personal way. Like, what feels impossible in our own lives?
Yeah.
What are those personal mountains we're facing?
Right.
And how might choosing to look at things through the lens of faith change how we approach them?
It's about taking those kind of abstract ideas and applying them to our own experience. Because when it comes to faith, it's not enough to just think about it.
Yeah.
We're called to actually live it out, even when it feels like we're facing the impossible.
So what Texto Colado is really encouraging us to do
Yeah.
is to take some time to reflect on these ideas, to really consider what we've been discussing and see where that takes us.
Yeah, it's about allowing those seeds of faith to take root, so to speak.
Yeah.
And remembering that the impossible isn't a full stop, but an opportunity to experience something extraordinary.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like we're being challenged to kind of shift our perspective and really embrace this idea of the impossible.
When we open ourselves up to that idea,
Yeah.
it really does feel like unlocking this whole new realm of hope and potential.
Totally.
It's like taking off a pair of glasses that have been blurring our vision and finally seeing the world in all its vibrant colors.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that story from Texto Colado about the fracture and the threat of amputation. Such a powerful example of what can happen when we just surrender our impossible to something beyond our control.
Yeah, it really highlights that power of letting go of the need to have all the answers and just trusting that there's a plan, even when we can't see the full picture.
And that sometimes that plan unfolds in ways that we just never could have imagined,
Right.
like in the form of miracles. Moments when the usual rules don't seem to apply and something extraordinary just happens.
Yeah, it's a reminder that possibilities are just so much bigger than we can even comprehend, with our limited understanding and expectations.
It invites us to consider that maybe, just maybe, there's something more at work in our lives than we can grasp with logic alone. That's beautiful. I mean, what would it actually look like to live with that kind of mindset?
Yeah.
Where we're constantly open to the potential for the impossible to become possible.
Well, Texto Colado suggests that it starts with like a shift in our internal dialogue.
Okay.
Instead of shutting things down immediately with, that's impossible. What if we pause and ask ourselves, what if it could happen?
It's like replacing a closed door with an open window,
Yeah,
welcoming in that possibility of something unexpected and amazing.
exactly. And it's not about naively believing that, anything we want will magically happen.
Right.
It's more about cultivating this sense of wonder and openness to the idea that there might be a way, even if we don't see it yet.
Makes you think about all those times in history when people achieved what was considered impossible.
Right.
Breaking the sound barrier, landing on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
These were things that people scoffed at.
Yeah,
But they happened because someone dared to believe in a different possibility.
absolutely. And Texto Colado encourages us to take inspiration from those examples, you know?
To remember that what seems impossible in one era can become a reality in the next.
It's about expanding our horizons and refusing to be limited by our current understanding of what's possible.
Yeah?
Daring to dream bigger, envision a world where the impossible becomes achievable.
Yeah, that sense of possibility, I think, can really fuel us,
Mm-hmm.
can give us that courage to keep going, even when we face those inevitable setbacks and challenges.
It's about recognizing that the journey toward the impossible might not be straightforward,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the unwavering belief that keeps us moving forward.
It's like that quote, the only way to do great work is to love what you do and believe that it's possible.
I love that.
Yeah, if we can embrace that in all areas of our lives, who knows what we could accomplish?
That's powerful. And it really connects to the idea that our limitations are not necessarily the limits of what's achievable.
Right.
It's recognizing that there might be forces at play, whether you call it faith, universal energy, something else entirely that can help us transcend those limitations. It's like tapping into a source of power that's greater than ourselves, that can help us break through those barriers and achieve what we thought was impossible.
And Texto Colado reminds us that this journey isn't just about achieving those big external goals.
Right.
It's also about the internal transformation that happens along the way.
Yeah, it's about how facing those impossible situations can change us, help us grow and evolve in ways that we never thought possible.
Like those challenges become catalysts for personal growth and self-discovery.
Yeah, exactly. It's recognizing that the impossible isn't just something we conquer out there in the world.
Right.
It's also something that we conquer within ourselves.
I think about those times when I faced a personal fear or obstacle and that feeling of overcoming it.
Yeah,
It wasn't just about the external achievement, but about the internal shift that happened.
right.
That realization that I was capable of more than I thought I was.
Totally. And those internal victories often pave the way for the external ones. When we overcome that self-doubt, our fear of failure, our limiting beliefs, we open up this whole new realm of possibilities.
So this journey of turning the impossible into possible is as much about inner transformation as it is about external achievement.
Exactly. It's about that interplay between the two. It's about recognizing that when we change our internal landscape, our external world reflects that.
It's a reminder that personal growth and external achievements go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And when we push ourselves beyond those comfort zones, we not only achieve great things, but we also become more resilient, more confident, and more open to embracing the impossible.
That leads us to a question that I think is really relevant for this journey.
Okay?
How do we stay focused on that possibility when we're constantly surrounded by, doubt, negativity, the constant reminders of our limitations?
It's like we're constantly bombarded by messages that tell us what we can't do, what's not possible.
Yeah.
So how do we stay grounded in that sense of possibility amidst all that noise?
Well, Texto Colado suggests it starts with being mindful of the voices we allow into our lives. Okay.
Are we surrounding ourselves with people who encourage our dreams, who believe in our potential, or are we letting the naysayers and the doubters kind of dictate our limits?
It's about choosing to focus on the positive,
Yeah.
on the voices that uplift and inspire us. It's about recognizing that we have the power to curate the information and the energy we allow into our lives.
Exactly. It's like creating a filter that blocks out the negativity and amplifies those messages that resonate with our goals and aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about the people around us. It's also about the media we consume,
Right.
the books we read, the thoughts we dwell on.
It's about consciously choosing to feed our minds with content that nourishes our belief in what's possible.
Yeah, it's like creating a fertile mental landscape where those seeds of possibility can take root and flourish.
And Texto Colado emphasizes the importance of action.
Right.
It's not enough to just believe in the impossible. We have to actively pursue it. We have to take those steps, even when we're not sure where they'll lead, because it's often in the act of doing that that the path unfolds.
It's about trusting that as we move forward, the way will become clear, having the courage to take that first step even when we can't see the entire staircase.
And sometimes those steps involve seeking guidance from others,
Okay.
mentors, teachers, those who have already achieved what we aspire to.
It's about recognizing we don't have to figure everything out on our own.
Yeah, it's about being open to learning from those who have walked the path before us,
Mm.
recognizing that there's wisdom and support available if we're just willing to ask for it.
Texto Colado reminds us that this journey of turning the impossible into the possible isn't always easy.
Right.
There will be setbacks, challenges, and moments when we want to give up.
Yeah, it's in those moments, I think, that we need to dig deep
Yeah.
to reconnect with our belief in what's possible.
It's about having the resilience to keep going, even when it feels like the odds are stacked against us.
Hmm.
It's remembering that those who achieve the impossible are often the ones who refuse to give up, even when everyone else tells them to.
Absolutely. And it's also about celebrating those small victories along the way.
Yes.
Recognizing that every step forward, no matter how small, is a step closer to our goal.
It's about acknowledging our progress
Yeah.
and giving ourselves credit for the effort that we're putting in, because sometimes the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
And Texto Colado also reminds us that this journey isn't a solo endeavor.
Okay.
It's about connecting with others who share our vision, who support our dreams, who believe in our potential.
It's about surrounding ourselves with a community that uplifts and inspires us.
Mm-hmm.
It's about recognizing that we're stronger together
Yeah,
and that we can achieve so much more when we collaborate and support each other.
absolutely. And it's also about recognizing that this journey of turning the impossible into the possible isn't just about achieving our own goals.
Oh.
It's about making a positive impact on the world, contributing to something larger than ourselves.
Using our talents and passions to make a difference, to leave the world a better place than we found it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our individual journeys are all interconnected,
Yeah.
and that when we empower ourselves to achieve the impossible, we also empower others to do the same.
Yeah, it's like a ripple effect where one person's belief in the impossible can inspire countless others to embrace that same belief.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful reminder that our actions, however small, can have a really far-reaching impact.
Yeah, I think it's worth kind of revisiting those questions from Texto Colado one more time.
Okay.
What feels impossible in your life right now? What are those mountains that you're facing?
Yeah.
And how might looking at things through a different lens, a lens of possibility, change how you approach them?
It's about taking everything that we've discussed today
Yeah.
and bringing it into our own lives,
Mm-hmm.
into our own hearts and minds. Because it's one thing to just talk about the power of faith, but it's another thing entirely to actually embody it,
Yeah.
to live it out in our daily lives.
It's about putting those principles into practice, even when it feels hard, even when we're surrounded by, doubt and uncertainty,
Yeah.
because it's in those moments, in those acts of faith,
Yeah.
that the impossible truly becomes possible.
So we're being invited to take some time to reflect on everything we've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
to let those ideas really sink in and to see where they lead us.
It's about letting those seeds of possibility take root in our hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And remembering that the impossible is not the end of the story, it's just the beginning of something extraordinary.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Texto Colado.
Yeah?
We hope it's given you some new ideas and inspired you to embrace the power of the impossible in your own life.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep believing in the power of what's possible.